Thank you, everybody, for coming on Zoom. We are here in person, but it seems like people prefer the Zoom option. So we'll just do this, like sit next to each other. I'll let him present. But before that, I want to say something about this talk and Timothy and what we've been through together. So I think our journey started when you took my class, Advanced Social Psychology.
Yes.
What was it, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
And we did the replications and extensions in that class. And I think I remember Timothy from that course, very quick to use R, Markdown. And we talked about a bunch of things during the course. And he did this wonderful, together with his team, this wonderful stage 1 register reports of CHAN. And usually what happens after the course is that I put this out on the Open Science Framework, and then I go on Twitter and I say, who wants to lead this, inviting early career researchers from around the world. But something exceptional happened. Timothy said he wants to lead this and submit this to peer community in registered reports, which 2 years ago just started out. And I was trying to figure out what is peer community in registered reports, how to do this. And it was great that an undergraduate student that took my class wants to lead this to publication. So we did that and we submitted this, and it's in final stages of the stage 1. But today we're here to talk about a different project. So after that, Timothy contacted me and said that he would like to work on a thesis together. And not only this, but Timothy went beyond that. And also for the first time, I think, suggested a target for replication. So there was a literature review that he did, and he came up with this target. Usually I'm a little bit hesitant to do that, but looking at the article, I saw that very impactful, very interesting topics that we care about in social psychology.
Yeah.
So I was very happy to try that. And in addition, I think very quickly we identified some cool extensions. So this was a correlational design, but then Timothy was open to trying to manipulate all sorts of things. At the beginning, we had grander plans, but then we kept it simple at manipulating empathy and seeing how this impacts forgiveness. So we basically took a correlational design and try to look at causality. So a lot of unusual things about the journey that I had with Timothy, and I'm grateful for all of that. So he went through his thesis as a submission, stage 1 register report to this revolutionary platform called Peer Community, received the stage 1, and finally led this all the way through to publication. And it's about to be also published in a journal. And what's nice about this is that we also received very encouraging comments from the original author that read this and really gave some praise about everything regarding this work. So I think across the board, everything that we've done together really shows Timothy did an amazing job, very courageous, both in his coursework and in his thesis, to try something new with me and lead this all the way through to the end. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing your talk. I'll give it to you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Philly. Good morning, everyone. I'm Timothy, a psychology graduate from the class of 2023. It's a pleasure to be back to my department and have the opportunity to share my journey of completing my undergraduate thesis under the generous guidance of Philly. The thesis holds special significance as it is one of the first undergraduate theses conducted as a registered report with the Peer Community in Registered Report initiative. I'm excited to share my insights as a student and an early researcher in the field. Here's the rundown of today's presentation. We'll start with an overview of the theory and the target model proposed by Professor McCullough and his colleagues. Then I will present the basic and the core aspects of my replication extension study. I will discuss the main findings, power analysis for the original article, and the modification I made for this replication extension study. Additionally, I will highlight the significance of completing a registered report with the peer community as a young researcher. Finally, I will share my personal takeaways as a student. Let's start with the background of the target model, the empathy model of forgiveness. Before diving into the essence of the model, I would like to invite you to participate in a recall experiment. Please take a moment to think of someone who treated you unfairly and hurting you at some point in the past. Visualize the events and interaction you had with this person in your mind. It could be your romantic partner, your parent, your colleague, or your best friend. Try to visualize the person and remember what happened. How do you feel? Are you feeling sad, angry, or confused? Have you granted your forgiveness to that person? We are all familiar with the concept of forgiveness, but what actually leads us to forgive someone who has hurt us deeply? This question has fascinated countless scholars, theologians, psychologists. Some propose that we require a motive in order to forgive, while others suggest that receiving an apology from the offender is necessary for forgiveness. Today, I would like to introduce you to a highly influential model proposed by Professor McCullough and his colleagues in 1997. This model, known as the empathy model of forgiveness, has received considerable attention and is widely cited in the field of social psychology when it comes to explaining interpersonal forgiveness. The essence of this model is quite simple and straightforward. Forgiveness is not an instant process. Instead, our ability to forgive others is closely tied to the level of empathy we feel towards them. The conscious decision to forgive is strongly influenced by the emotions of empathy we experience towards the person who has wronged us. The figure here illustrates the original empathy model of forgiveness proposed by McCullough, which includes two key components. First, empathy acts as a mediator between dispositional and environmental variables, influencing their causal effect on forgiving. Second, forgiveness represents a motivational shift that encourages constructive actions, such as conciliation toward the offender, while discouraging destructive actions such as avoidance following an interpersonal offense. Okay, the theory may sound straightforward and has been scientifically tested by Professor McCullough. I believe you may wonder why I chose to replicate a research study conducted nearly 2 decades ago for my final year thesis, instead of pursuing a novel research topic based on my own ideas. I want to bring your attention to one of the most pressing and concerning issues spreading across the scientific community in the 21st century, the replicability crisis. Replicability is the cornerstone of modern science, ensuring reliability and credibility. However, it has been discovered that many research studies conducted and published in journals cannot be reproduced. This is absolutely an alarming situation, and the issue of replicability is not limited to psychology alone. It affects other significant fields of science, such as medicine, computer science, chemistry, cancer research, and quantum physics. In the field of psychological science, several prominent psychologists have been working hard to rebuild the credibility of this discipline. Professor Brian Nosek from the University of Virginia is the key figure in the replication movement. His team initiated a meta project aiming to replicate some of the classic studies in the field that were considered truth and heavily cited in influential research. To our surprise, almost half of these studies turned out to be irreproducible. Even among the replicable studies, many shown significantly lower effects compared to the original findings reported in the target papers. In Hong Kong, Philly and his collaborative open science and meta-research team conducted a meta-replication project, and our team's finding revealed that the replication rate for social psychology study is approximately 30 to 50%. Moreover, most of the effect size observed in the replication were about half of the original's one. When I first learned about the crisis during Philly's lecture in PSYC 3052, I was genuinely shocked. It made me realize that many of the theories I learned in my introductory psychology courses could be potentially incorrect. Yet, these theories are still presented as absolute truths that psychology students must expected to memorize. I find this situation absolutely ridiculous. It made me question if there was anything I could do to contribute towards the changing this situation. That's why I made the decision to conduct a replication study as my final year thesis. I reviewed numerous classic studies in the field of social psychology that had not been replicated before, but were frequently cited in other journals, or even served as the foundation for many other theories. Finally, I selected two significant papers published by Professor McCullough and his team, which focus on explaining interpersonal forgiveness. There are three main reasons why I chose to replicate Professor McCullough's work. Firstly, to the best of my knowledge, there have been no published direct replication of these studies. While McCullough expanded this model by incorporating additional variables such as commitment, impact of offense, ruination of the offense in predicting forgiveness, there has not been a replication of his original study, specifically focusing on empathy. Second, the article has had a significant impact on scholarly research, particularly in the fields of social and clinical psychology. At the time of this discussion, the article has received 2,521 and 2,706 citations on Google Scholar, and it has inspired important follow-up theoretical and empirical studies. For example, Thompson and his colleagues' 2005 study explored the dispositional dimension of forgiveness. Furthermore, the empathy-forgiveness link established by McCullough research has been crucial in the forgiveness therapy, which is widely implemented in the clinical settings nowadays. It's even considered the theoretical foundation for numerous psychological treatments addressing various life issues in clinical settings, including spousal infidelity, bereavement, and post-traumatic stress disorder. After providing the background information on the empathy model of forgiveness, let's review some key findings from McCullough's original article. The empathy model of forgiveness consists of two main hypotheses. The first hypothesis proposed that empathy acts as a mediator between dispositional and environmental variables, influencing the causal effects on forgiving. The second hypothesis suggested that forgiving promotes constructive action toward the offender while inhibiting destructive actions following an interpersonal offense. Building upon this core hypothesis, several sub-hypotheses have been developed. Hypothesis 1A and 1P posit a positive association between empathy for the offender and report forgiveness towards the offender. Hypothesis 2A and 2B predicts that forgiveness will be positively correlated with conciliation motivation and negatively correlated with avoidance motivation. McCullough and his colleagues utilized various statistical analysis to examine their forgiveness model. This includes comparative fit tests and structural equation modeling to structure a forgiveness and empathy measure. Pearson's correlation tests were employed to assess intercorrelation among variables. Additionally, a series of nested structural equation models were conducted to support the proposed causal mediation relationship. However, it's important to note that the interpretation of the results from the structural equation models in the original articles was flawed. From the statistical standpoint, structural equation modeling itself cannot establish a causal mediation relationship. True experimental designs with variable manipulation are necessary to establish causal relationships. Therefore, the use of structural equation models in the original article exceeded their scope. Now, let's discuss the effect size and the 95% confidence intervals. The results in the original article indicate positive correlations between empathy, forgiveness, conciliation, motivation, and avoidance behavior, shows a negative correlation with other variables. Importantly, all these correlations are statistically significant at a p-value lower than 0.01. Here I would like to raise an interesting point. The results obtained by Professor McCullough in the original study show large correlation. Even the lowest correlation you may find between the degree of apology and empathy being 0.36. These effect sizes are significantly larger than those typically observed in social psychology. These findings also highlight the importance of our replication study. Can we replicate the empathy model of forgiveness, observe similar effects after 20 years since the original research, was first conducted. It will be definitely fascinating to see if we can yield comparable results in a direct replication. In my replications and extensions, I made the following adjustment. I followed the instruction in the original study in data collection and replicate all the Pearson's R correlation tests. However, I did not replicate the structural equation models used in the original article, since they cannot test the causal mediation chain proposed in the model as the original study claimed it. Study 2, which involves clinical intervention, will also not be replicated due to the limitation of my undergraduate thesis project. Apart from that, I incorporated the revenge motivation measure developed by Professor McCullough in 1998 into our replication to see the influence of empathy and forgiveness on the revenge motivation. It will be another conceptual replication. Another key extension I made was to fill in the theoretical gap in McCullough's original study by designing a truly randomized experiment. The effective empathy is manipulated to examine the causal relationship between empathy and forgiveness. The design in the extension is a much stricter test for the causal mediation chain proposed in the empathy model of forgiveness, compared with the design used in the McCullough's original article. Here are the measures used in McCullough's original paper: perceived apology, empathy, and forgiveness. These measures items are all strictly adhered in my replication study. And here are other 3 additional behavioral measures: conciliation, avoidance, and the revenge motivation. To ensure that the replication study can detect all the effects of interest mentioned in the original article, I conducted a priori power analysis for the intercorrelations between variables in the original study. The power analysis indicated that a minimum sample size of 94 would be required to detect all the significant effects. Above is the R-Coke plot I used for power analysis. With the smaller correlation, the analysis aimed for a 95 power with an alpha level of 0.05. By rounding up the sample size, it was determined that a minimum of 94 subjects would be needed to detect the effects. Lastly, I will introduce the extension design for my project. For my extension, I manipulate the affective empathy that participants record during an offending situation. The study consists of 3 conditions. In the high empathy condition, participants were asked to recall a situation where they felt highly empathetic towards the offender. In contrast, the low empathy condition involved a recalling situation where subjects felt unempathetic towards the offender. The third condition served as the control condition following the original study design used in McCullough's research without manipulating empathy. Participants in this condition were asked to recall an offending situation described without any indication of empathy. All the replication correlational analyses that can be compared to the original research were conducted on condition 3. This experimental design allows us to test the link between empathy and forgiveness, establishing a true causal relationship. By manipulating affective empathy, we can explore the impact it has on the forgiveness process. Another important extension I made in this research was to investigate the relationship between revenge motivation and other variables. To accomplish this, I incorporate the measure of revenge developed by Professor McCullough in 1998, which has been conceptually replicated in our study. To ensure that our extension design has sufficient power to detect the effects of interest, I also conduct a power analysis for the one-way ANOVA with 3 conditions. The original study had a sample size of 239. As our research added 2 additional conditions in my extension, the required sample size increased to 717. Taking into account the possible exclusion ranging from 0% to 10%, I aimed for a larger total population, a sample size of 800. I also perform a sensitive analysis, which indicates that a sample size of 800 will be adequate to detect an effect size of Cohen's F 0.14 with 19.5% power and an alpha level of 5%. Here's the summary of the replication extension design. As you can see, I conduct a true randomized experiment using a between subject design. The study involved one independent variable with 3 conditions and 6 independent variables. In this design, subjects were randomly assigned to one of the 3 conditions, allowing for a comparison of the effect's different level of affective empathy. The 6 dependent variables were measured to assess various aspects related to the research questioned. After conducting a series of data and collection and analysis, we have reached the following findings. In general, this replication study can be regarded as a highly successful one. All the correlation of interest align with the original results. Empathy is positively associated with forgiveness with a very similar effect size of R equal to 0.63. Apology is positively associated with empathy with a larger effect size compared to the original research. The association between forgiveness and conciliation motivation is significantly smaller than the original article. However, the correlation between forgiveness and avoidance motivation remains the same in the replication, with both showing a consistent negative association of negative 0.73. Furthermore, forgiveness is negatively associated with revenge motivation. The results align closely with the original research, providing further support for the observed association. Based on these consistent findings, we conclude this replication study as a highly successful one. For our first extension, we manipulate emotional empathy experienced by our subjects into 3 conditions. The results suggested that empathy causally influences forgiveness with a partial ETA squared effect size of 0.08. Additionally, through the manipulation of emotional empathy, the results also indicate a causal influence of empathy on the perception of apology, with a partial ETA squared of 0.02. These findings provide evidence for the role of empathy in shaping how individuals perceive apologies. Another significant extension in this replication study is the inclusion of revenge motivation alongside to the original empathy model of forgiveness within a single study. In line with the hypothesis, revenge motivation was found to be negatively associated with forgiveness. However, contrary to expectations, perceived apology and empathy were not found to be correlated with revenge motivations. In other words, this means that even one perceived the offender as more apologetic or experience greater empathy towards them, neither factor can accurately predict the motivation for revenge. So you may have this question in your mind. This is a classic study, self-evident, and of course replicable. What makes it so special? Before starting the data collection, my supervisor, Philly, and I conduct a prediction poll on Twitter on March 26, 2023. The poll revealed that out of 30 researchers in the community, 70% predict an unsuccessful replication of McCullough's study. This prediction was lower compared to the predictions for other targets included in the same Twitter poll. I believe this reaction reflects a hindsight bias that many, including the researchers, hold towards replication studies. These predictions sharply contrast with the highly successful replication I'm presenting here. This contrast further emphasizes the importance of testing intuition and addressing the potential misconception regarding the significance and comprehensive independent registered reports for direct replication. Another significant achievement for this replication study is its successful integration of the core elements from the 2 papers into a single study. On one hand, it conducted a direct replication of the original empathy model of forgiveness in 1997. On the other hand, it performed a conceptual replication regarding the revenge motivation in forgiveness in 1998. Additionally, the inclusion of the manipulation of affective empathy addressed the theoretical gap in the original model and established a genuine causal relationship between empathy and forgiveness. By combining these three components into one single study. The replication study effectively expands upon the previous research. This comprehensive approach contributes to a deeper understanding of the complex dynamics involved in forgiveness, on the role of empathy in the process. Lastly, I would like to share with you my experience in conducting a replication study as a registered report within the peer community of registered reports. In the traditional publishing model, peer review typically occurs after data collection and completion of the manuscript. During this process, we lack certainty about whether we are on the right track. If any aspect of our work is disapproved by the reviewers, the report may not be published, rendering our efforts in vain. This uncertainty can be so discouraging, as we invest time, resources without knowing if our work will be accepted. It highlights the need for a more proactive approach that allows for feedback and guidance earlier in the research process. What is even worse is the traditional publishing model contains numerous problems. These include publication bias, p-hacking, results-driven culture, papers serving as an advertisement, prioritizing novelty over quality, and unfortunate emphasis on statistical significance rather than the truth of science. These miserable aspects corrupt the essence of psychology. Reducing psychology as a tool for mere promotion, it transforms the field into something far from its true purpose of conducting genuine science. However, in the revolutionary model of registered reports, journals undergo a two-stage peer review process. During the first stage, experts from the field provide feedback on the research plans. They address important questions such as, are the hypotheses well-founded? Are the methods and proposed analysis feasible and sufficiently detailed? Is the study adequately powered? Have the authors include sufficient positive controls to ensure a fair test? These questions are crucial in ensuring that we are on the right track before proceeding with the data collection process. By addressing these concerns early on, we can enhance the quality and validity of our research, setting a strong foundation for robust findings. Below you may find detailed comments from our reviewers for my replication studies. Psychologists from all across the globe who advocate for open science and PCIRR provide genuine and constructive feedbacks on my research plan. This experience has been extremely valuable for me as an early researcher, as it allows me to thoroughly examine the weakness of my original study plan while overcoming my potential biases. I think the reviewers' comments have played a crucial role in enhancing the quality of my research. By considering their expertise and perspectives, I have been able to refine my study design and address any potential limitations, deepening my understanding of the subject matter. At stage 2, the same group of reviewers will carefully examine our manuscript, ensuring that the authors have adhered to the approved protocol. They will also assist in verifying the success of the positive controls and assessing whether our conclusions, as stated in the manuscript, are supported by the data. This thorough review process at stage 2 provides an additional layer of scrutiny to guarantee the integrity and accuracy of our research. The insights of the reviewers help strengthen the validity of our findings and enhance the overall quality of the manuscript. Conducting research in the form of registered report offers comprehensive solution to effectively tackles publication bias and various research bias such as p-hacking and post hoc hypothesizing. However, the statistical power requirement, moreover, the rigorous statistical power requirements of registered reports enhance reproducibility and encourage important replication studies and resources-intensive projects. This research approach embodies the core principles of genuine science by promoting transparency, rigor, reproducibility, addressing the limitation of traditional publication methods, Embracing registered report has the potential to revolutionize the scientific landscape, ensuring the integrity and credibility of our research findings. For those considering conduct their research in the form of registered report, I highly recommend choosing PCIRR. PCIRR offers a remarkable level of independence in selecting the journals for publication. Moreover, it provides a range of benefits as listed below. And most importantly, it is completely free of charge. PCIRR ensures that the research undergoes a thorough evaluation by expert reviews. Once your registered report is accepted, the journal commits to publishing the final results, regardless of the outcome. PCIRR has profound implications for my undergraduate thesis, and I believe it is the best learning experience for undergraduate students. Through PCIRR, students have the opportunity to receive direct feedback from field experts regarding their research plans. These feedback not only provide constructive criticism, which of course sometimes critical is essential for improvement, but also occurs at an early stage. By incorporating the outcomes and insights from renowned researchers in the field, the resulting paper attains the highest standard of publication, where students acquire valuable experience in conducting authentic scientific research. Most importantly, PCIRR allows students to obtain in-principle acceptance before embarking on data collection. I'm excited to share my experience of completing my thesis as a registered report on replication. It has been an incredible, valuable experience. It has deepened my understanding of the core principles of psychological science. I firmly believe that replication studies are just as important as novel study and require a strong grasp of experimental design in the research process. Throughout this journey, I've had the privilege to engage in a direct conversation and learning from the outstanding researchers, authors, and reviewers. Their insight and expertise have greatly influenced my perspective. I'm embracing the principles of transparency, forthright, and humility. Completing my thesis as a registered report on replication has provided me with the invaluable knowledge and insight. It's reinforced me significance of the psychological science and the commitment for the need for rigorous research. I'm grateful to be part of this journey. Thank you very much. Professor McCullough's theory, people often think that forgiveness, people forgive people often include motives or a motivation to forgive some other people, or the wronged person need to receive the apology in order to forgive others. But Professor McCullough proposed a model here to illustrate that empathy is the core, or even play a crucial role in facilitating forgiveness. Apology does not directly contribute to forgiveness, but it influences the empathy that the wronged person received toward the offender, so that forgiveness happened. And forgiveness is not merely a decision, but it brings changes to our behavior, that it promotes the conciliation behavior toward the offender and reduce the avoidance behavior toward the offender. And yeah, I think it's the general picture of the original model of forgiveness.
Thank you for a great talk and impressive work, Timothy. I understand that personality can explain considerable amounts of variance in empathy. Wouldn't it be therefore important to include personality factor into a comprehensive model of empathy and forgiveness? Would this be another feasible extension? So I think in general, what I would like to ask as a broader question is like, what kind of follow-ups do you see for this? Now that you've established that this is like solid and you have a better understanding of this, what do you see as like valuable follow-ups and how this might relate to personality traits?
I think after a successful replication for this model, it's important to have another extension of follow-up, the extended model that Professor McCullough also proposed in 1998, which we have just partially replicated in our study. As you may know, what we are going to do here is to replicate the essence of two study. But if you dive into the original article, you may find that the original article expand or includes much more variables than we have included in this study, like the relationship with your offender, like the seriousness of the offending moment, or the some of the personality trait, like Haley, you have mentioned agreeable. I think it's like kind of partially included in the extended model of the empathy model of forgiveness. So in response to what Philip you asked, I think the next step or the further extension we can do based on this work is to have a thorough and comprehensive replication for the extended model, which include much more variable in explaining the forgiveness model.
So maybe I'll ask you things more about, less about the research itself, but more about like you and the journey. So it's very rare for undergraduates to go through peer review and interact with people like Chris Chambers, big name in registered reports, and all these reviewers. Probably a little bit scary and intimidating.
Definitely.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit about how you dealt with this? How was it for you as an undergraduate actually doing real research and interacting with all these scholars, talking to the original author?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a privilege to have been able to talk to the original author, those big names like Professor McCullough, Professor Chris Chambers. These are all the big names in the field of psychology. And through the registered report, I'm able to have a very direct, like through email conversation with them and learn from their general opinion. It's definitely a very like scary process as an undergraduate student. But really, thanks to the generous help of Philly, I'm able to like confidently address their comments and their detailed reviews of our work. And I would say it's like one of a lifetime experience for undergraduate students to have this chance to learn from these big figures in the field of psychology, to learn from their comments and push your ability to the limit to let your paper to reach the high standard of the academics. Yeah, so though it is a very hard, it's definitely a hard experience to do your undergraduate thesis as a registered report, but it's also an invaluable one.
You also contributed back. So the research that you did actually informed the literature. So Chris Chambers and McCullough, they all learned from the research that you did.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you want to pursue additional studies. You're actually here at HTU, so you haven't like went elsewhere. You're thinking of a master's and maybe something beyond. How do you think this experience will influence your further studies, both in practice and maybe research?
I think what I learned from this project is far more beyond than the knowledge, like what is forgiveness, what is empathy. I think what I learned is the best practice of conducting science. Like you need to be transparent. You need to be open-minded to all the criticism, and you need to stay humble throughout the process and let the reviewers to give direct comments on what your works are. And like you have to admit your failures. Even like the best person in the world would have their bias. How come researchers cannot admit their failures? I think this is something I will bear in mind, even though I may or may not pursue another career or continue my study in psychology. But there's the practice and the attitude that like is the most valuable thing that I gained through these projects.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Final question for me.
Yeah, sure.
think there's, I saw from the list, there are lots of students listening to you, both undergraduate and maybe postgraduate. And they're thinking about their own research work and their own studies and maybe their thesis, internship, and doctorate. If you can give like one big advice based on your experience, what would you recommend for them to do? What would be like the one takeaway for them in their own studies, in their own research?
We must all stay humble. I think it's really important. And of course, I will recommend you to do a registered report or a replication. But I believe some of you may, listening to my talk may not be from the field of psychology. So you may not have the chance to do a replication study or etc. But I think stay humble and have an open mind to receive criticisms is like the cornerstone for you to grow to become a better person. And this is what I learned throughout the journey of doing the registered report, because I have to receive numerous feedback, sometimes it's a bit harsh, but these are all very, very valuable comments for you or for me to understand the weakness. And these weaknesses are also important for you to grow to become a better person, I think. Yeah. So be humble is my...
That's inspiring. Yeah. Thank you.